dialogue between Dr. Bryant and Nick Cannon and Dr. Bryant and Cam Newton are very important dialogues. I think you're talking about two men that at least understand they have the means to support multiple children and multiple women. I think the deeper dive into the dialogue is the acceptance and the willingly creating quote unquote broken homes. I had two different kids by two different women at the age of 21, right? And at that time, all I knew from parenting and about parenting is that I saw my dad all the time because he lived with me, because he was married to my mother. And I knew I didn't want children, whether it was my daughter at that time or my son, to not be used to seeing me or to have to turn to another man and call him father or accept him as their father because I wasn't there. That was important to me. I didn't walk into those situations with their mothers at the time and say, I want to make this baby. I was careless, right? I wasn't focused or intentional about not doing it. But then I had to make a decision. You can't make that decision, and it isn't to, if this happens unknowingly or because of irresponsibility, right away say, I'm going to marry this woman if it's a bad situation, because you don't want that kid to grow up in that either. But I do understand when she's saying you're making these decisions to create houses, not homes, right? One is what you can afford based on your wealth. And the other one is what you can afford based on the amount of time God gives you, which is not infinite. Right. I commend both men for being willing to have the conversation. I think there's always going to be a level of defense there, but she was being honest in that, like, they're functioning in their lowest functioning selves. When we are aware of that, now we accept that. And so it's saying that, hey, this ideology is fucked up. Right. It's not only messed up, but it's now going to create a generation of children and of women that can also be messed up based on a decision I knowingly made. You can be aware of that, and if you accept that, that's fine. But in accepting it, we can't ignore some of the issues that it can create. Right. And when we are in our lowest functioning self in every decision, I can say this for myself, there are times where you think, am I even doing the marriage right? Am I doing the parenting right? Would it have been better if I did try to be a father outside the home? And I would have to guess that if you decide to have 8 different babies with 3 different mothers, there are times you say, man, did I do that right as well? I don't think life is about perfection, but I do think it's about perspective. And I do believe that Dr. Bryant provided very important perspective for 2 very wealthy men that do have to understand time is something we can't buy more of.
All right, that was Ryan Clark from Pivot's podcast. Cam Newton and Nick Cannon intentionally making decisions with knowledge of potential negative impacts. And just so you guys do know, it was brought to my attention by some professionals that low functioning and high functioning is actually medical terms that are associated with people with autism.
So, I seen that Nick Cannon interview. Well, not the Nick Cannon one. I seen the Cam one. I seen clips from the Nick Cannon one. I don't agree with neither one of them on how they're doing things, but I can give a little bit of grace to Cam, because if what he's saying is true, I don't know how factual it is that the kids live with him, then I have a little more grace than I do for Nick Cannon. At the end of the day, I'm a man whose father wasn't always in his life, so I know what it feels like not to have his father in his life. I know that empty feeling, that hurt feeling, that disappointment. I understand it. So I can relate with some of these kids that he's probably talking about and he has to deal with, because I was that child. So it's easy to relate to. But I don't believe you can actually be a productive and good father and you're not present in a kid's life. I don't believe in Skyping my son or my daughter. I don't believe in calling on the phone and finding out about the day. I want to see them in person. I want to see their body language. I want to see their reactions when we have these conversations and these interactions. I want to be able to hug them, hold them, talk, tell them I love them in person. It's cool if you got to do it on the phone every once in a while, but this can't be a regular thing. Nick Cannon, you got all of these kids and none of them really live with you, but probably besides the woman you probably dealing with now. That's the only reason why you staying with you is because you're dealing with her now. As soon as you break up with her, she's another home that you're no longer living and you doing your thing. He's working. He always brags about how hard he works. So how are you spending any quality time with your kids? You're not. But let me tell you what you're doing. You provide for them financially because you're making all this money, and that's nice and that's good. But what about that balance that you're missing out on of being in attendance to their concerts, their events, knowing what they're doing in school and participating by parent and teacher conferences? You're not doing that. If you are, you may be doing it for the 1 or 2 kids that you live in the same city with. But what about them other 8, 9, and 10 kids that you're not seeing, that you're not participating with, that you have to hear about it later on down the line because you got to rely on your baby mama to call you and tell you what happened? No, I want to be right then and there. I could imagine missing my son's game and I got to rely on my ex-wife to tell me what his stats was. I'm not seeing my daughter's concert or performance or cheerleading event because I got to rely on my baby mama to call me and tell me, or maybe even send me a clip or 2. No, I want to be involved. I want to be there. I remember sacrificing overtime at work in order to be at my son's events. I schedule my extracurricular activities around some of my sons and my daughter's event because I wanted to be there. And why? Because when my daughter was 8 years old, she sit there and told me, "Daddy, I wish you was here." When she shared that shit with me, that broke me down. That cut to my heart because now I'm having flashbacks of what it was when I was a child. I can't do this to my baby, and I will not. And ever since that time from there on out, I made sure I didn't miss an event. If that means sacrifice on certain things, and certain money, or certain opportunities, then so be it. Because at the end of the day, I had to invest into my child. That's the most important investment I can make into your future. I'll leave it there.
All right, go ahead,
I wish she
Shanae.
was on the panel on Thursday, because on Thursday we tapped this conversation. Not one man had that insight. Everybody was on the same page that if you can financially provide, that you are doing it, and that it's no different than having to work a job that you work 2-3 days in a row for overtime. So it's just interesting to hear, Mel, because I was really convinced after that panel Thursday, like, okay, I guess I don't know. I don't see how a man can be in the household multiple guys and think that they're
Different
still
energy over
providing.
here. It's a Sunday energy. It's different over here. Ain't that right, balance?
Absolutely, Hank. And I nobody says something, so I'm gonna say something. Then I guess. Wait, matter of fact, come back to me because I'm trying to say what I want to say without offending people. So come back to me.
No,
say what you got to say. I mean, I would assume everyone, as far as me and Jay, the males on the panel, we agree with Hank 100%. He summed up everything every way that we would feel. So.
And I respect that so much. I love when men can be real and not just putting on for social media like so many other podcasters are doing right now, which is very strange. Like, would you want your father to be Nick Cannon? Like, honestly, like, would you want that as your father? Like, we got to be real. So, and I think in this situation, the onus is on the man and the woman because it takes two to make these children. So if the man is low functioning, that woman's low functioning. They're low functioning together at the bottom, regardless.
And she probably got a phone call or a text or something. But I think anybody is going to, if you're living a certain lifestyle, you're going to make 1,000 different concessions and excuses to support whatever that ideology is or whatever type of damage you're doing. You know what I mean? You're going to create a perspective where people see it your way, or at least try to. You know, when in reality, like Balance just said, like Hank just said, the father not being in the child's life, and especially not being under the same roof, there are residual effects to that. You know, there are a lot of things you're going to miss out on. There are a lot of things that are needed visually. You know what I mean? If I just think of the stuff I visually saw my dad do as a man, go through, you know, his wins, his losses, how he dealt with them, how he recovered from them, just observing all of that. That's important. If you're not there, who are they seeing this from? You know what I'm saying? Like, can you imagine, a little kid just sitting there and you watching Saucy Santana, because your mom is hanging out with, you know, so who they're observing is important. Even before you could even talk, I'm sure a lot of y'all, when y'all were younger, y'all probably have memories that are more visual. You probably don't hear anything. You don't remember like what was being said, but you remember like the picture in your head of visuals. And even starting at that age, you see things and they sink in and they become a part of who you are. So I would never agree to a father not being in a household if he can't. Things happen, life's. It happens all the time. But for you to make that an actual decision, like I'm going to create all these kids and not live in one roof with them, not live under the same roof as any of them. Like, nah, you can't ever make that make sense to me.
Yeah, it does a lot of damage to society. Those children are going to grow up and have a certain perspective of love, of what loyalty looks like, of what intimacy looks like, what relationships looks like. These people may remain bitter all of their lives, or they may use that as fuel to go after the contrast of what they were seeing. But I would say often now, especially in this generation, a lot of people aren't strong-willed or strong-minded enough to make that decision. So it really causes a big disservice to the overall look and feel of society, and then especially in our culture, because there's no structure, there's no foundation, and without structure and foundation, we all know what's going to come after that. So I think that it is imperative for men to be aware of where it is that you're planting your seed. I think that we've taken the mystery and beauty of sex away, and it's just so easy just to pass out. So now, we got that on top of everybody just having unprotected sex. Oh, it's casual sex. It don't matter. I'm gonna hit you raw. I'm gonna nut in you. I'm gonna do all of this crazy stuff with a woman that I don't want to be with long term, or a man that I don't want to be with long term. And then we create these broken homes and then point the finger at each other. So I think that it's imperative that everybody, man's up, woman's up, whatever, and hold people accountable for the actions and decisions that's being made, because it's not only hurting your home, it's hurting the culture and the society as a whole.
You know what? I would have to add on to that. I agree with what you're saying, but I want to add that I think that we have devalued just having a family, period. Even your kids. People don't even value their kids anymore. I mean, because you gotta want to be there to watch your kids, and that means you don't even place a value. You don't even prioritize them, which is why you're able to do this. So I think it's more than just sex; it's the whole shebang. To be honest, we've taken the value
Like
out of all of
even the jokes about kids are different. I don't have any kids, but the last couple of years I've been hearing that F them kids. I was just like, I've never heard that growing up, or any of my friends with their kids. But now it's like jokingly, and it's
Hey,
like, hey,
man, don't hang me for this. But right now, we're literally living through an era where people are fighting to be able to unalive children. Like, that's a big big cause as to why they're choosing to think and essentially vote a certain type of way. So I think if I understand the premises of it, I understand the reasoning of it, but when it's said out loud and you really stand back and look at what's being said, there's literally a group of people that are fighting for the ability to unalive children. So I think that adds on to it as to what is it that we're really promoting and putting out there. Because if we are talking about family, and we are talking about marriage and having a one home, then we can't have those conversations at the same time, because there are going to be people that don't understand what's being said. They don't understand the premise, but they only hear what's being said.
Real quick, you know what I would respect even more, like with the Nick Cannon and Cam Newton, like even if they had like a compound, say if they had like a giant house
They
or
live in the same neighborhood. All
Lil
his baby
Boosie doing
mamas.
it. Lil
right,
Boosie doing it. But everybody has to be on the same page for that to work.
I would respect that more than just having, you know, different states or different areas. I would respect that more than just willingly, you know, creating a child here, child there, and just because I got money to do it.
I think both are equal to, you know, equally creating broken homes, because these women are going into it knowing what that situation is, and they prioritizing the money. Oh, it for them, it's an investment, like a financial investment, as opposed to necessarily it being a value for family and wanting to raise our kids together and things like that. I think women in society as a whole place, like what we were saying earlier, place so much value and emphasis on the financial aspect. It's like, oh, if I can buy it, I can provide. Oh, they in the best schools. Oh, they got the best clothes. Like, that's parenting. That's not parenting. You know, that's the lowest aspect of 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 parenting, right? You're just meeting the basic needs, right? Even as though it's the best school or the best clothes, it's still just a lower need. All of those higher needs that you need are more so on the emotional, like we talked about before, emotional, mental, all of those things. And if you are not there, you're not pouring into that to develop that aspect, to make that kid be the best that they can be. And then we're going to continue to have this cycle of broken men and women, and these poor relationships as a whole. The other thing is, I agree with it. It goes both ways, where we're saying that we don't value family. I think we don't value family in like this generation, and I don't think there are family values. So on both ends is like we reinforce poor values. I don't know if people establish what it is as a family we're going to pour into our kids, right? To make them productive, successful citizens, have a good esteem about themselves, and know who they are. We lack promoting family values as well. And it goes in hand with lacking, you know, valuing family altogether.